to move forward. And we have the consumers. And obviously that's what we know the best, is probably what we do the best. And there's a whole bunch of other stakeholders in this as well, utility companies and corporations and all this stuff. And I used this analogy once in DC and Dan loved it, so I'll use it again. We are the grouch between all of those tiles. We do a lot of the interpreting between those spaces, and we do a lot of translation. And you know, we're not usually lucky enough to get to come to rooms like this. They're this full and this well educated. And so we spend a lot of time trying to translate all of this into things that everyday average people can understand. One of the analogies I've used the most because it resonates with people is that, automakers say to us all the time, we want to build cars people want to buy by the millions. They're not asking for plug-in cars by the millions, ergo, they must not want them. That's great, but I just got back from Lincoln, Nebraska, and most of them don't know what a plug-in car is. Or, pick your poison, but wherever you go, it's clear there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And so the analogy that we've started to use is, how many of us looked at our Walkmans and said, I wish this were the size of a deck of cards and I could watch TV on the thing. We didn't know we wanted iPods till they were out there. And yet, clearly, we've all mostly gotten used to the whole idea. So we spend a lot of time trying to get people to imagine the iPod when it comes to cars. And humanizing this whole thing, because the one thing we've found overall is this is not really a technology story. This is a human interest story. And the more that we can humanize this entire movement, the more we can get more average people to see their place in it. So that's what we do in a nutshell. We run around, we translate, we interpret, and we try to boil it all down to stuff that any average person can understand and figure out a way that they could get involved in it too.
All right. Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions, but I'm going to have a couple of instructions here because we have a lot of people, and we might get a lot of questions. I want to be ask one question and keep it short. We don't want no speeches, please, because we have a lot of people here. So there are microphones, and just step up to the microphones. I'll pick you, and we have to switch between the microphones, so I'll let the fellow at the back know which microphone. So what we have here is some expertise about these vehicles. You've been able to see them. If you have any questions about how they work or the future of these, here's your chance to step forward. Over here, and then.
Am I on? Yes. Thanks to all those very interesting talks. And I'm not sure who I should address this to. Maybe you guys can decide who will field it. But about the batteries, it seems like the battery is definitely one of the big nuts to crack here. And I'm concerned about the full cycle environmental impact of the batteries. It seems like these batteries are often made from what I will call icky materials, which are difficult to extract from the earth, et cetera, and there's also disposal problems. And I wonder, if we look at, 40 million of these on America's roads, what's that story?
That's a great question. I mean, batteries, in the past we've had, of course, issues with lead in our natural systems as well as other carcinogens, and I will turn to, I think Mark can answer most of these technical questions. I'm going to keep pointing at this guy.
Well, on a relative ickiness scale, recently, batteries have improved. Nickel cadmium was really a bad one because they tended to be small batteries and they ended up in the landfill and the cadmium would leach out, and it was really, truly, truly bad. But recently, especially with consumer batteries, and then these are the things that are now in cars, nickel metal hydride batteries, like your rechargeable batteries, lithium-ion batteries in your phones and computers. Lithium-ion is what we're talking about for plug-in hybrid cars. And every major battery company that's going to be in the automotive market has to have a recycling program. Every automaker has to have a recycling program. It's not that you're going to go to Joe's garage and he's going to have a big stack of these battery packs out back. It'll be something that will be fairly rigorously controlled. It's high voltage. For safety's sake, you don't want people messing with them. They're going to try and get these things and get them into either secondary use or recycling programs. In terms of, for example, mining, mining has tremendous impacts, whether it's everyone ever see a copper mine? Well, and I think, obviously, whenever we're extracting raw materials, we want to do it in as environmentally responsible way as possible, although I would not vouch, obviously that's often shown to be very difficult. But recycling and reusing is part of how you keep it down. And I think with lithium-ion batteries in general, you're not looking at anything that's necessarily worse than any of the other components on the car. So I think that it is an issue that will be addressed and must be addressed. But I wouldn't worry too much about it.
I'm going to add one little piece to that, and that is in the universities and also in research groups like EPRI, we are conducting relatively rigorous, what we'd call, well-to-wheels analysis of the environmental impacts of automobiles at every stage. The automobile manufacturers are doing this too, so there's some work going on that. This person right here in the front.
Thank you. I'm not going to buy another car unless it has a plug in it. So my question is you're talking about all of these plug-in vehicles being available in 2010. How am I going to decide among which one I'm going to get? And are the manufacturers actually going to sell them? Or are they going to do like an EV1 where they don't really sell them? They don't want to let you have them if the, what are we going to be expecting in the marketplace?
Well, in terms of which one you should pick, I'm not going to begin to tell you which one you should pick. You should pick the one that works the best for you and that appeals the most to you. If we have anything to do with it, you'll have a variety to choose from. It certainly looks that way. We have half a dozen major automakers that are all doing pure electric cars, obviously some really intriguing smaller companies, and a slew of various flavors of plug-in hybrids and e-revs and all of those. What we wholeheartedly encourage, and you've heard this mantra before, the No Plug, No Deal campaign, is that you call them and you ask for what you want. And if you want to buy it and not lease it, you ask for that too. Because the one thing we know is you're not going to see in a showroom what we don't ask for. But I do think that definitely the closed-end leasing thing is probably not going to fly so much in the future given the history with it.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add is we're at Google very excited about putting other vehicles into our fleet for testing and putting up on the website. We think that's a useful role for us and others to play. Get the vehicles as early as you can, run them through their paces in a rigorous way, and let people see the results.
And hopefully good ratings so that we can actually compare.
Yeah, another piece of that in part of my research would be your lifestyle. So there are cars that'll have 10, 15, 20, depending on the size of the battery, depending on the way you live your life. Some people never drive more than 5 miles from home. Other people commute 100 miles every day. The types of vehicles those two households need are very different according to specifications. Over here.
Let me add one quick thing. Is that I'm the sense that I'm getting from the folks in the auto industry that we're working with is that they're mobilizing in a way that we didn't really see for the electric vehicle. I mean, they really are planning to try and make a game of this one, and that requires selling vehicles to end users and not leasing. Although they do acknowledge the leasing is a big part of their business, and then that may create some minor issues with how people would see value. If you buy a car and you're going to drive it until the wheels fall off, that's always been my strategy. I was 32 years old before I bought my first new car, so I was 36, excuse me. So so if you're cheap, and you're going to drive it until the wheels fall off, that's a different strategy than if you're just going to lease it for 3 years and then get the shiny new model after that. But what we're seeing is different and different motivation. They want to do this not because they want to do this because they're really worried about the long-term future of gasoline as a fuel. I had an R&D vice president of one of the major auto companies say, gasoline's done, oil's done, we won't be using it in 2050.